My name is Luna. I'm 26 years old, and I'm the finance manager at a logistics company in Minneapolis. I used to think I still had a home to return to, at least for special occasions like Thanksgiving. But that night, right in the kitchen where I had just finished roasting a golden brown turkey, my father Greg threw his phone into the sink and shouted, "From now on, you're no longer part of this family. Get out of my house. Now!" My mother stood nearby, calmly drying an apple peeling knife as if none of this had anything to do with her. And Emily, my younger sister, just smirked and said coldly, "Told you, it was bound to happen." I didn't cry. I just pulled out a grease-stained napkin, wiped my hands gently, and looked straight at the three people who used to be my family. Fine. But don't start crying when the lights go out with the heater. Have you ever been pushed out of your own home by the very people you thought you were protecting? Have you ever silently carried the weight for everyone, only to be treated like a burden? If you've ever felt that way, share your story in the comments. Hit like if you believe that staying silent doesn't mean you're weak, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for the next part of this story when I walked away from that house and took with me its light, its warmth, and its soul, piece by piece. I walked out of that cold kitchen with something sharper than any blade silence. No one stopped me. No one asked where I planned to go in the sub-zero Minneapolis night. I passed through the hallway where the grandfather clock ticked steadily, as if to cruelly remind me that my time in that house had never truly counted as belonging. I went upstairs, closed my door softly, and leaned against the wooden frame whose hinges had long since broken but were never repaired. Everything around me was familiar down to the peeling paint, but never once did it feel like home. I looked at the photo of our family taken the day I got hired at my company. They stood on either side of me, forcing smiles. I remembered on that day, I had promised to use my first bonus to buy a new washing machine. They had all patted me on the back like I was a cash cow finally producing steady cash flow. 5 years ago, after my dad went bankrupt from a bad investment and retired early, the house shifted overnight from a family home to something more like a subsidiary, and I was the only source of capital. My mom, Clara, used to work as a high school librarian, but after a mild back injury, she stayed home full-time. No one asked if she wanted to go back to work, and she didn't plan to. At first, I gave her a supplementary credit card to help with groceries and medicine. But soon, it became her nightly shopping tool on Amazon for everything from kitchen towel sets to Italian juicers. Emily, my sister, once had ambition. She studied business administration at a community college, tuition fully covered by me. But after 2 semesters of failing basic accounting, she gave up. Since then, Emily officially became the one with reasons not to get a job: mental health, social pressure, unpredictable weather, and most recently, the excuse that I made her feel inferior by being successful. Luna will never understand what it's like to be compared to a perfect big sister, Emily once said, right after spilling iced tea all over the utility bill I had just paid. I never asked for thanks. In the beginning, I helped because I thought I was repaying them for childhood dinners, for the nights my parents stayed up with me when I had a fever. But over the years, helping became duty. Then duty became habit, and eventually, habit turned me into someone invisible. No one in the house ever asked if I was tired from work. No one asked why I was losing weight or why I came home late for 3 months straight. But the moment I bought the wrong brand of toilet paper, not the one Mom liked, she would frown through the entire evening. My father used to say, "Making money doesn't mean you know how to live. You just work like a robot and can't even bond with your own family." Every time he said that, I stayed silent. I remember once I tried to speak up. "I'm paying every single bill in this house. If I stop working for just a month, this place will—" "Don't threaten your parents," my mother cut me off, her tone as flat as if she were replying to an email in her head. "Family is about supporting each other, not keeping score." Emily, lounging with her legs on the arm of the sofa I paid for, muttered, "Sounds like someone's asking for rent." I didn't argue. I just went to my room to continue preparing financial reports for my company, while in the living room, they watched Netflix on the account registered to me under the internet service I paid for. Sitting on the couch I financed over 2 years. Have you ever been in a position where you paid for everything yet were treated like the inconvenience? Have you ever tried to hold a home together, only to receive nothing but skepticism, snide remarks, and cold distance from the people who share your last name? I used to think I just needed to try a little harder, that if I saved up enough, I could buy a small condo and gradually ease myself out of this so-called family life. But I was wrong. That evening, after my father kicked me out like some outsider, I sat in my car under the porch light, dim street lamps casting faint shadows on the dusty windshield. I didn't cry, I just felt cold. Not from the weather, but from something inside me that had once believed in blood ties, finally dying without a proper goodbye. I called Marcia, my closest colleague, and simply said, "I can't go home tonight." She didn't ask anything, just replied, "Come over. I made cauliflower soup. You like that?" Her voice so simple and unconditional made my throat tighten. I started the engine and drove away from the place I used to call home. The porch light flickered like it had for months. No one had replaced the bulb. I had thought about ordering a new LED set on Amazon, but I stopped, because suddenly I realized that place wasn't home anymore. Have you ever paid for everything but still been called someone who doesn't fit in? If you have, you're not alone. And my story isn't over. I haven't even told you what happened when every utility got cut off, when the whole family finally realized the person they'd just kicked out was the only one keeping it all running. But I won't take revenge with rage. I'll do it with silence, by walking away from the role they always assumed I'd play forever. I arrived at the house before 8 in the morning, arms full of grocery bags, breath turning to white mist in the crisp Thanksgiving air. Every year, I'd handled everything from planning the menu and grocery shopping to cleaning the kitchen and setting up decorations. I had long stopped expecting anyone to help. The turkey, weighing just under 12 pounds, had been pre-marinated by a farm outside the city, ready for stuffing and roasting. I also made pumpkin pie, Mom's favorite, and a vegetable salad so Emily would have something to eat that matched the green lifestyle she'd announced she was following just last week. While stirring the cranberry sauce on the stove, I heard the dragging shuffle of slippers from the stairs. Emily came into the kitchen, hair messy, wearing bunny print pajamas, yawning like today was nothing special. "Did you make coffee?" "It's in the machine. Your mug's in the second drawer." She didn't say thank you, just mumbled, then picked up her phone, pulled out a chair, and scrolled through TikTok. I stayed silent. By late morning, my mom came downstairs too. She wore a worn-out beige cardigan and carried a stack of napkins and plates. "Help me set the table later, okay?" I nodded, placing the pumpkin pie on the counter to cool. "Where's that yellow tablecloth we had last time?" Emily took the decoration box to her room last week. No idea where she put it. I walked upstairs, meaning to look for it, but then I stopped. I didn't need to chase after every little thing anymore. I spread out an old tablecloth and placed a few dry maple branches I'd picked up yesterday on my walk back from the grocery store. It wasn't fancy, but it felt warm. My dad came down last. He wore a charcoal turtleneck sweater, holding a glass of wine, and sat at the head of the table like a boss inspecting the final product from his workers. He glanced at the food, then checked his watch. "Let's eat." No compliments, no blessings. I pulled my chair in, trying to keep the life inside me from being swallowed up by the coldness of the people who used to be my family. Emily was the first to take a piece of turkey breast. My mom cut the pie. I poured more gravy. The quiet clinking of silverware against plates filled the silence. I was about to speak, maybe ask my dad how his back had been lately, when he slid his wine glass aside and placed both hands on the table. "I have something to announce." Neither my mom nor Emily looked up. "I signed the deed of this house over to Emily last week." I froze. The soup spoon in my hand dropped onto the plate, broth splashing onto the table. "What did you say?" "Simple. This house now belongs to Emily. You don't have any say in it anymore." I turned to my sister. She made a show of pretending to be surprised, eyes wide and lips parted like she'd just found out too. But I knew better. No one receives a house deed without knowing. Why? Why her? My mom avoided my eyes, fingers tightening around the napkin. Emily helped herself to more mashed potatoes. My dad crossed his arms and spoke in that meeting tone of his. Emily is the future. She's young. She needs a foundation to start over. You, all you do is work, come home, pay bills. You don't have what we call family connection. I laughed, a sharp, dry sound rising through the buttery smell and fake flowers on the table. You mean all these 5 years I paid the electricity, water, internet, tuition, medicine, and even the secondary credit card mom uses every night to place Amazon orders? Those were just emotionless contributions? No one answered. I can't remember the last time I was thanked. But I remember every text asking for money, every bill in my name, every time I was called distant, just because I didn't have time to sit down for dinner. My dad set his wine down, voice deeper. Don't use money to control everything, Luna. Family isn't a corporation. I stood up, gripping the back of my chair. You're right. Family isn't a corporation. But it's also not a bottomless well I'm supposed to pour my entire youth into, only to get silence, disdain, and now eviction from the place I've kept running. My mother spoke softly, barely above a breath. Don't exaggerate. We just want what's best for Emily. And I don't deserve anything good? Emily chuckled under her breath, mocking. You're successful. You're independent, strong. Why would you care about this house? I looked at her. The sister I once held when she cried over bad grades. The one I bought ice cream for when her boyfriend broke her heart at 16. She was now sitting there, hand open to take the keys to a house I kept warm for 5 years and couldn't even offer a word. I walked away from the table, not looking back. Fine. But don't cry when the lights go out with the heat. No one spoke. My bedroom door opened and closed behind me. That night, I didn't eat a single bite of turkey, but I started to feel full from finally seeing the truth and knowing exactly what I needed to walk away from. I sat quietly in the room that used to be my only place to breathe when the world outside got too loud. But tonight, even this space seemed to be silently saying goodbye. No one knocked. No one called me back to eat. Thanksgiving dinner probably went on downstairs, maybe with clinking glasses and stories told like I'd never existed in that house. I didn't cry. I just felt my fingers go cold, one by one. I got up, pulled my suitcase from under the bed, and began packing as if I'd already prepared for this. I folded each piece of clothing, placing them neatly in the right compartment. On the left, I packed my laptop, work files, and a small box of old photos, including one of me and Mom when I was in high school. The colors had faded, but my eyes in that picture still held hope for a future filled with love. I walked out of the room, went downstairs, where the kitchen still smelled of turkey and melted butter. Everyone had left the table. Dad was watching TV in the living room, Mom washing dishes, and Emily was nowhere to be seen. No one looked at me. I didn't say a word. I walked straight to the corner near the bookshelf, where the modem I had installed 3 years ago still hung, the one we used when the old internet plan was cut off for non-payment. I unplugged it and pulled the modem from the wall. Dad turned to look. What are you doing? I looked up, voice calm and cold. I paid for this. I'm taking it. You're really leaving? I looked at him. I didn't choose to leave. You pushed me out. My dad said nothing more. He turned back to the Thanksgiving music show on TV, pretending not to care. But I saw his hand tighten around the remote more than usual. I walked into the kitchen, opened the drawer, and took out the stack of bills: electric, water, gas, internet, Mom's secondary credit card, even last winter's plumbing repair. All of it was under my name. I placed them all in my bag. Mom was drying the last dish. She didn't look at me. She only said quietly, "Don't make this a big thing." I paused at the front door, then turned around. The words left my lips without hesitation. When this house turns bone cold, I hope the papers you signed can keep you warm. I opened the door and stepped outside. No one followed. No one said, "Take care." No one called me back like in those family movies we used to watch together years ago. Only the cold wind hit my face, carrying the scent of damp earth and snow about to fall. I drove straight to a small apartment complex on the south side of the city, where Marcia, my coworker, was already waiting. She opened the door, still wearing her dark sweater, hair tied up, and her warm eyes nearly broke me. "Come in. I already made cinnamon tea." I didn't say anything. I just stepped inside. The apartment was small and cozy, filled with the scent of candles and soft jazz, playing from a Bluetooth speaker. Marcia placed her hand on my shoulder as I set my bag down. "Stay as long as you need. I told you you're always welcome here." "Just a few days. I'll start looking for a place soon." She nodded without pressing further. We sat on the sofa, sipping tea, talking casually about an ongoing project, as if filling the widening void inside me with noise. But while Marcia got up to refill the kettle, I pulled out my phone and logged into every payment account I managed. I removed all payment methods from the electric utility app. Then I unlinked the card from the water company's online portal. Internet, cable, gas service, even Netflix one by one. I deleted each account, each subscription. No warning. I had warned them enough through my presence for the past 5 years. They never listened. I signed out, set the phone down, and leaned back into the couch. Outside the glass window, snow had begun to fall. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt a bit lighter in my chest. That night, I slept on the fold-out bed in Marcia's living room, holding a soft pillow against my chest, feeling as empty as the house I had just left behind. The next morning, as I was getting ready for work, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. 7 missed calls, 4 from Mom, 2 from Dad, 1 from Emily. Before I could even open my messages, one from Emily popped up. "What the hell did you do? No electricity, no hot water, internet's gone too." I didn't respond. An hour later, Mom called. I answered. "Luna, what's going on? The TV won't turn on. The heater isn't working. Your dad's losing it over here. I only shut off what I was paying for. Now everyone can reactivate it using their own accounts. But we don't know how to sign back up. And your dad's really upset." I cut her off, my voice calm. "Well, he can use the house he signed over to Emily to barter for services. As for me, you told me not to make a scene. I'm just doing what you asked." I hung up. No trembling, no guilt. I slipped my hands into my coat pockets and stepped out of the building, blending into the morning rush of Friday workers, as indifferent as the family story that had ended the night before. 3 days had passed since I left that house. 3 full days without a single pang of regret. In Marcia's small apartment, every morning I brewed coffee using my own machine, hung up my coat neatly, and opened my laptop for work. No one asked if I'd transferred money. No one called me cold for skipping dinner. No one woke me up at midnight to complain about a delayed Amazon package. Only silence, lavender oil in the air, and a soft exhale I hadn't allowed myself for years. On the 4th morning, during a virtual meeting with the Chicago finance team, my phone buzzed nonstop. 12 missed calls, 8 from Mom, 3 from Dad, 1 from Emily. I turned off the ringer and continued presenting the final quarter's profit margin breakdown. But when the meeting ended, Emily's text was already waiting long as a monologue. "What kind of person are you? It's been 3 days without power. Mom's sick from using the cold gas stove. Dad smashed the heater remote trying to get it to work. I had to shower in freezing water. Are you seriously going to let us freeze to death in winter?" I read to the bottom and smirked at the last line. "You're living the easy life now and threw your family out like trash. You should have never been born into this house." I didn't reply. That night, Marcia and I had dinner together. She made baked mac and cheese with collard greens, something I usually only ordered at restaurants but had never dared make at home. One mess in the kitchen and Mom would say I was too chaotic. I was lifting a spoonful to my mouth when a notification came in from an unfamiliar account. I opened it. It was a screenshot of a social media post. Emily's. Face, big eyes. A sorrowful expression accompanied by a caption, "My sister abandoned our entire family in the middle of winter. Our aging parents are suffering. I'm unemployed. We have no electricity, no hot water. If anyone can help, please reach out." The post had hundreds of shares. In the comments, people offered sympathy, words of encouragement, even offers to send blankets, gifts, or cash. I stared at the screen, my heart still. Marcia glanced over, set down her spoon. They really pulled that move? Yeah, I said, handing her my phone. She sighed. Maybe you should say something. No need. They need an audience to fill the hole I used to plug with service, but I'm not there to maintain their image anymore. I stood up to make more tea. From the little kitchen, I heard Marcia call out. There are others like you, you know. I came from a family like that too. Gave and gave until I had nothing left to keep for myself. I stayed quiet. The warmth, tang of the mug slowly spread through my hands. I knew Marcia understood. She used to be the oldest of 5 siblings. She'd once been called a cold-hearted overachiever for moving out and stopping tuition payments for her youngest brother who dropped out to gamble. The next morning, I arrived at the office. While adjusting financial figures on my screen, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Mom. I let it ring out once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th call, I picked up. Sweetheart. Her voice was faint. I'm sorry if I said anything wrong the past few days. What's going on, Mom? We really lost power. They shut it off. The bill was under your name. Your dad's furious. He was yelling and slamming doors all night. Emily didn't come down to eat. I don't know what to do. I didn't respond immediately. What do you want me to do? I don't know. Just get the electricity back on. Last night was so cold. The heater wouldn't start. I wore 3 layers and still couldn't stop shaking. I took a slow breath. Do you remember whose name was on the service plan? She went quiet. I did everything for 5 years. No one ever asked how. No one remembered my name except when the bills arrived. Now that I've stopped, you're finally seeing who kept the lights on in that house. I know you're angry. But Emily's still young. I pressed my lips together. Being young doesn't mean being selfish, and being an adult doesn't give you the right to trample over others. You let Dad humiliate me in front of everyone, kick me out of the house, and you just stood there. I was afraid he'd get even angrier. And I was the one who had to endure all those fits of anger in silence, right, Mom? I heard her sigh. Then, silence. I'm sorry. I can't come back. If you need help, contact the electric company and change the account holder's name. Handle it yourself. Emily has internet. If she knows how to post online, she can figure out how to submit a name change request. I hung up. My fingers trembled slightly, but not because I felt weak. It was because I had defended myself. I stepped out of the office, stood by the hallway window, and watched as the snowfall thickened. Below, people hurried down the street. In that world, I used to think I was the only one left behind. But now, after stepping out of that endless loop, I realized, sometimes we're the ones who need to leave behind the things that have held us back the longest. And sometimes, collapse doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes, just the right silence is enough to shake an entire system already rotting from the inside. I always thought I had everything under control. From personal expenses to family payments, from banking to utility accounts, streaming services, I kept everything organized, labeled, backed up like I was running a small office, not just trying to keep a family from falling apart. But in the end, that meticulous care couldn't fight off the kind of greed disguised by one word: blood. That evening, after a long workday and 2 hours of meetings with the logistics team on an international shipping contract, I returned to Marcia's small apartment. She wasn't home but had left a sticky note on the dining table. Went to yoga. There's chicken soup in the pot heated up. While warming up the soup, I opened my laptop to check personal emails. A notification from the bank popped up, with a simple subject line: unusual activity alert, 3 failed login attempts. I froze, my heartbeat slowing. I opened the message. It listed the time, IP address, and device used. An old laptop running outdated software. I knew immediately it could only be my father. That same laptop he had used since his days as an accountant at the factory. He'd asked me to reset it a few times, and I remembered clearly there was a file on the desktop named Passwords MOM. I had half joked back then. What's the point of passwords if they're just stored on the computer? He had scoffed and said, "What do you know? Everyone has their own way of managing things. I logged into my account and changed every password immediately. Bank account, email, digital wallets, payment services all updated with a new 16-character passcode made of uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and symbols. I enabled two-factor authentication, added fingerprint recognition, and even set up an independent security app. No one, not even family, could get in now. I closed the laptop, hand still gripping the mouse. A dull headache began to form at the base of my skull. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling as a strange wave of emotion washed over me. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even pain. It was the clear, cold realization my father no longer saw me as his daughter. I was now just a vault he was, determined to break into. I thought cutting ties with that house would be enough. But it turns out they were still clinging to whatever pieces of me I had once given, like it was their default right to reclaim them anytime they wanted. I reopened the banking app just to double-check. Everything looked fine. But then my eyes landed on the Authorized Users tab, a secondary credit card I'd once opened for my mother when she used to buy household items. I remembered removing it from Apple Pay, but never fully canceled it. And now, the statement showed 3 recent transactions in the past 2 days. A cosmetics order just under $200, a humidifier for over $150, and a cash withdrawal at an ATM for the daily maximum $500. I sat frozen. I knew right away. It wasn't Mom. She had never withdrawn cash from a credit card. Her purchases were always online, routine, and relatively cautious. The only person who always claimed to have emotional instability as a reason to splurge was Emily. I opened the shopping app and used customer support to trace recent orders linked to the card. Sure enough, the shipping address was the old house. Recipient's name, Emily G. I didn't call. I sent a short text, cancel the order, or I'll report credit card fraud. Less than 3 minutes later, my phone rang. What the hell are you doing? Emily shouted. Who do you think you are, threatening me? I'm the one paying the credit card bill, I replied calmly. But not anymore. I just submitted a request to permanently close the secondary card. Any transaction from now on will be declined. She went silent for a moment, then laughed. Wow, you're that petty? Mad over a few skincare items? Or are you just jealous that I still live in the house and you got kicked out? I gripped the phone tightly. Yes, I left because I was kicked out, but you'll be the one watching the lights go out one by one, until you learn what it means to live without someone else footing the bill. Her voice turned shrill. You think you'll win? Everyone sees you as heartless. I don't need your money. I'll figure it out myself. Good. Starting tomorrow, pay for things yourself. Withdraw cash using your own account. And if even one more charge shows up on my card, I'll send the full transaction history to the bank's fraud department with the IP address from your device. I hung up. I didn't wait for her response. I didn't let myself waver. 15 minutes later, I received confirmation that the secondary credit card had been canceled. Pending transactions were reversed. I opened the drawer and poured myself a glass of water, my hand still shaking slightly. Not from fear, but from a new realization. The line between love and exploitation in a family is so thin, it only takes one no for them to label you a traitor. Bedroom, and lay down. Minneapolis was starting to get colder, but under the warm blanket, only one thing stayed clear. I was rewriting how I deserved to be treated. I never thought the person who'd forced me to file a theft report would be my own mother. That night, snow fell heavily, covering the tire tracks leading back to the old house. The wind slapped my face with freezing gusts, stinging my eyes as I stepped out of the city police patrol car. A uniformed officer walked beside me, carrying a copy of the civil supervision order I'd requested 2 days earlier after receiving a security breach alert from my new apartment. 36 hours earlier, while I was at work, my phone buzzed with a notification about unusual motion in my bedroom. When I opened the surveillance camera feed, the image was unmistakable. My mother, Clara, she stood in the middle of my room, wearing thin gloves, opening drawers, flipping through notebooks. Slowly, methodically, like she was searching for something she believed belonged to her. No fear on her face, no rush like a thief, just a calm, chilling resolve I had never seen in her before. I didn't scream. I didn't call her. I just sat there, frozen, clutching the edge of my desk until my knuckles turned white. I had changed the locks. I had moved out in silence. I hadn't told anyone my new address, except Marcia, the only person I trusted. And yet, she still found her way in. A few hours later, I checked my car. The built-in GPS had been temporarily disabled. The black box recorded an unauthorized access attempt from an unfamiliar device, likely a signal cloning tool. I suddenly remembered. The last time I went back to the old house to grab my remaining things, my mother hugged me, cried, and said, "I'm sorry for how things turned out." I let my guard down and left my bag near the car, with the spare key still inside. I never imagined she'd use that moment to steal something she believed belonged to the family. When we stepped onto the front porch of the old house, the living room light was still dimly lit. I knocked. Slow, cautious footsteps echoed from inside. The door cracked open. She stood there, a wool scarf around her neck, eyes wide with surprise seeing me next to the officer. "Luna, what are you doing here?" I stood silent for a moment, then spoke slowly. "You took my laptop and savings book." Her eyes shifted. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The security cameras caught everything. You used the old key to enter my apartment. You opened drawers, took my belongings, and left through the back door." She turned away, biting her lip, then murmured, "I needed those things." The officer stepped in. "We need to verify and retrieve stolen property, Mrs. Clara, please cooperate." I walked inside. The air was cold, like it hadn't felt warmth in days. I saw my brown leather backpack sitting on the dining table, its zipper cut open. Laptop was gone. I looked over at my mother. She stood still, not meeting my eyes, staring instead at the family photo from my graduation hanging on the wall. "How long have you had that money?" she asked, her voice low, each word heavy. "For 3 years. It's from my first job. I never touched it, just kept it for emergencies." "That money came from your hard work, didn't it?" I nodded. "Then why can't I touch it, when every single household expense relied on it?" I looked at her. "Because it's mine, not the family's, not Dad's, not Emily's, not yours. It's mine." She clenched her fists, trembling slightly. "I didn't take it for myself. I took it because the furnace needs repairs. Emily has allergies to dry air. Your father hasn't slept in weeks. I just needed a little to make things normal again." "There's no normal anymore, Mom." I shook my head. Normal was when I quietly held this house together while being treated like an outsider. Normal was working myself to exhaustion so no one else had to face reality. But I'm no longer there to fill that gap. The officer gently interjected. "We'll need you to return the stolen property, and we'll proceed with verification if the plaintiff requests prosecution." My mother turned and silently went into the bedroom. A moment later, she came out with the laptop, a small box containing the jewelry I used to keep in a drawer, and the savings book, already opened. She placed them all on the table. I walked over, said nothing, and packed each item carefully, as if picking up pieces of my dignity from the snow-covered floor. Just as I zipped up the backpack, she spoke softly. "Can you forgive me?" I stood still, not turning back. I can't forgive someone who taught me that kindness must be hidden or it'll be taken away. In that moment, I saw her back thinner, unsteady, like she might fall over. But I also saw clearly this was no longer the woman who used to hold my hand crossing icy streets in winter. I walked out of the house I once called home, down the stone steps now coated with a thin layer of ice. The officer walked beside me in silence until we reached the car. "Do you want to press charges?" I stared into the dark, toward the flickering street lamp. "Not yet, but if it happens again, I won't hesitate." I opened the car door, placed the backpack on the passenger seat. As I sat behind the wheel, I realized something I had faced it. I stood my ground. I reclaimed what was mine. And I didn't need to scream to do it. I just had to stop bowing my head. Monday morning, I filed the official police report. I laid everything out clearly. My mother had broken into my private residence and taken personal property, including a laptop, savings book, and jewelry, all captured on camera. The officer documented each item in the report, his eyes briefly hesitating when I named my own mother as the accused. "Are you sure you want to move forward with charges?" he asked in a low voice. I nodded without hesitation. I won't repeat the weakness that allowed this to happen. That very afternoon, my mother's bank account was temporarily frozen under investigation. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel vindicated. I just exhaled because I chose to stand with myself, even if it meant turning away from my own blood. But it didn't end there. The next morning, just as I walked into the company lobby, a colleague rushed over, looking alarmed. "Luna, something's going on. There's an older man outside yelling your name. Says he's your dad." I froze. Not out of shock, but because I felt nothing. I walked toward the hallway by the windows. From the second floor, I saw my father Greg wearing an old gray coat, a knit cap on his head, holding a sign scrawled with crooked letters. "Ungrateful daughter. Took her own parents to court." He stood at the company gate, right, in the middle of morning traffic, shouting like he was performing in a cheap tragedy. "Luna, you're a disgrace. You sued your own mother. How could you, after all we did for you?" A security guard rushed over to intervene, but my father flailed his arms, slamming against the barricade, drawing stares from drivers. A few people recognized me, their eyes filled with quiet pity. I wasn't embarrassed. I was exhausted. I walked downstairs and stepped up to the gate. The guard looked at me, waiting for direction. I nodded. "Let him stand there. But if he damages property or blocks traffic, call the police." I turned around, leaving behind the sound of his screaming echoing like nails hammered into the pavement. I walked straight into the conference room, opened my laptop, and started the quarterly strategy presentation with the executive board. My voice was steady, my eyes dry. 45 minutes later, I received a notification. He had been taken away by police for disturbing the peace and threatening employees. No resistance, just sobbing and yelling. "I just want to see my daughter." When I listened to the audio recording the security team sent, I was alone in the staff lounge, staring blankly at the white wall. "Luna, you ungrateful brat. We gave you food, gave you clothes. You don't get to cut off your bloodline." I wondered, how many people have been fed, clothed, only to be told they must give up their right to protect themselves? How many were turned into living wallets, financial instruments disguised as family? I texted the police department to confirm I would not withdraw the report. I filed an additional request for a personal protective order, including a no-contact radius of 650 feet at my workplace. That afternoon, Marcia came home from work and found me sitting in front of my laptop, the blue light casting a dull reflection on my blank face. She walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder. I have to be strong all the time, Luna." I pressed my lips together, looked up at her. "I'm not strong. I just don't want to bow my head ever again." Marcia said nothing more. She poured me a glass of red wine, handed me a blanket, and turned on a soft old jazz record. We sat there without saying much, but I felt silence, without emptiness. That night, I opened my email. One message came from an unfamiliar address. When I opened it, the first line made my chest tighten. "You think you've won? Don't think silence means it's over. I'll make you regret this." No signature. But I didn't need to guess. I forwarded the message to the police, along with the full report history and the restraining order. I updated my security system, changed all passwords, activated AI motion tracking and facial recognition at the front door camera. I was no longer the good daughter, afraid of being misunderstood. I was an adult defending her boundaries. That morning, my work inbox had a message titled, "Internal Review Notice, Request for Personnel File Verification." I thought it was a routine audit, but as I read further, my heart sank. HR stated that they had received an anonymous message through the corporation's whistleblower system, accusing me of falsifying work history on my application, exaggerating my credentials, and claiming I was promoted due to personal ties with the executive board. Every line felt like a sharpened blade, aimed at the career I had spent nearly 8 years building from the ground up. My breath caught as I finished reading that email. I read it again slowly, carefully hoping something might be different the second time. But no. The words were the same. Cold. Precise. Deliberate. Not random. I stood from my desk and walked to the office of Daniel Harris, head of HR, an older man with a deep voice and a meticulous nature. He had served in the military before retiring and moving into corporate consulting. Not easily. Rattled by baseless accusations, but fiercely serious about anything that could affect the company's reputation. When I walked in, he gestured for me to sit. On his desk was a thin file clipped with a silver binder. "Luna, I know this may come as a surprise, but since the company received a formal complaint, we're required to investigate." "I understand," I replied, my hands resting on my lap. "May I see the contents of the message?" He nodded and turned his laptop screen toward me. I read every word. Each sentence was crafted to sow doubt. Not directly accusatory, but laced with insinuation. That I once claimed experience at an organization without clear verification. That I allegedly completed a project with no third-party validation. That I may have leveraged her position for preferential treatment. Very familiar wording. So familiar it made my skin crawl. Emily. No one else could write like that unless they knew the exact details of my professional history. Someone who had seen me pulling all-nighters for reports early in my career. Someone who heard me talk about the first projects I did for free just to get recognition. Someone who had sat in my room, listening to me dream about someday presenting in front of a shareholder board. Only Emily would know how to twist the truth so skillfully. I looked at Mr. Harris. "I can provide documentation to clarify all of this." He nodded without hesitation. "I trust you will. We believe in your integrity and ability, Luna, but policy is policy. I hope you understand." "I'll cooperate fully," I said, then stood to leave. Before walking out, I turned back and asked, "Is the IP address of the complaint traceable?" He paused, then answered softly, "Yes. But since the report was submitted through our internal platform, we can't disclose that unless there's a formal legal inquiry." I left the HR office, not angry, not afraid, just tired. Tired of always. Holding up a shield against the knives thrown from behind. That night, I pulled out all my original documents. I scanned and uploaded everything to HR, with a detailed breakdown addressing each item. I even contacted 2 former colleagues from those early unpaid projects, asking if they'd be willing to confirm my role if needed. Step by step, I stayed calm, organized, professional, just as I'd always been. And when I finished, I opened my personal laptop and logged into an old email account I hadn't touched in years, the one Emily once used to sign up for online courses. In the password recovery section, I requested a reset code. And in the recovery phone number field, 4 familiar digits appeared. 2207. I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair. No need to dig further. The next morning, I sent Emily a direct email. Short, quiet. "I used to think you were creative, but it turns out you just recycle the past and weaponize it. Sadly for you, I've kept better. Records. Every degree, every seal, every original email. I'm not suing. I'm not threatening. I just want you to know, if there's a next time, silence will not be my response." Less than a minute later, the message status changed to read. No reply followed. I sat by the window of my apartment, watching snow fall across the rooftops across the street. Everything outside was white, pristine, still. But inside, for the first time, there was a small corner of me that no longer felt soft, a place that had learned to recognize the difference between kinship and a blade wrapped in velvet. I'd spent years thinking if I just tried a little harder, I would be accepted, loved. But the truth is, some people can't love you not because you're not good enough, but because they never understood what love without conditions looks like. And I no longer owe anyone an explanation for that. I moved to Street Paul on a March morning, when the snow had just melted and patches of lake. Water shimmered like shattered glass. The house I rented sat on a quiet street next to a park, bare maple trees in front, and behind it, Como Lake still as an old mirror. The house wasn't big, just 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and a backyard wide enough to grow a few rows of vegetables. But it was quiet, filled with light, and most importantly, no one knew who I was. The first time I stepped inside, I heard only one sound: my own breathing. No TV blaring all day. No heavy footsteps down the hallway. No harsh words floating in the air. Just me, my suitcase, and the potted plants I brought from Marcia's apartment. It took me exactly 1 week to get used to the silence. At first, I still played soft music each morning, cooked way too much for one person, and set an extra pair of chopsticks at the table. But I adjusted. I learned to eat alone without feeling lonely. I learned to read without being interrupted. I learned to listen to the wind through the window without feeling I'm suffocated. One afternoon, while walking along the lakeside, I met Haley. She was sitting alone on a bench near the water, clutching a worn-out teddy bear, her eyes staring far into the distance like an adult lost in old thoughts. I slowed down, not intending to talk, just something in her eyes made it impossible to walk past like a stranger. Haley turned when she heard my footsteps. She didn't smile, didn't shy away, just looked at me with her clear brown eyes. Strangely, those eyes reminded me of myself at 10 when I first understood that not everyone born to be a parent knows how to love. It started with a hello, then small questions. Haley lived in a social services center 6 blocks away. Her parents had died in a car crash when she was just 7. No relatives, no one came to adopt her. For the past year and a half, she'd grown up among other children and the long silence within the walls of the shelter. I don't know what made me file for adoption just a week later. Maybe it was her eyes. Maybe it was the look that held no blame, no begging, just quietly waiting for something better. Or maybe I had been waiting for someone like me, a child who knew what it felt like to live in a house full of people yet feel completely unseen. Adoption wasn't easy, especially as a single woman with no prior history of marriage. But I had a stable job, a clear income, good credit, no criminal record, and as the social worker wrote in the evaluation, a strong sense of responsibility and the emotional empathy needed to care for a child who has been hurt. Haley moved in at the end of April. When the shelter's car pulled into the driveway, I had already prepared a small corner of the bedroom, painted a soft sky blue, with a little wooden bed and a shelf full of books. She didn't say much on the first day, just placed her 3 belongings on the shelf: the teddy bear, a faded old photo, and an almost empty notebook. I didn't ask. I just smiled and said, "You can put anything you want on the wall. This is your room." Haley nodded slightly, then quietly picked up a pencil and began drawing on the first page of the notebook. 3 weeks later, I got the notice. Greg and Clara had their house in Minneapolis repossessed by the court due to unpaid taxes. I wasn't surprised. Since I stopped paying all their bills, that house had been like an empty boat adrift in a sea of financial chaos. I used to think they'd figure it out. But I was wrong, or maybe I had too much hope they'd learn to stand on their own. Emily had long disappeared. No one knew where she went after I sent that last email. My mother once called me in the middle of the night, leaving a short message. "Your sister ran away. She didn't say anything, didn't take anything. I don't know if she's alive or—" I didn't finish listening. I deleted the message. I couldn't keep being the cushion for every mess they made. Haley began, smiling more after the first month. She loved going to the grocery store with me, picking out fruit by herself, counting out the amount from a toy plastic wallet I gave her on shopping days. She named every plant in the yard. Basil was Benny, rosemary was Rosie, and the tiny tomato plant became Tom Jr. One night, as I was washing dishes, Haley came over, wrapped her arms around my waist, and whispered, "Mom, I think this is where I'll live forever." My hands froze. The water kept running, but time paused for a few beats. I looked down at her. That face no longer carried the sadness I saw the first day we met. It was filled with hope, with peace, the kind I spent over 20 years learning how to keep for myself. I hugged Haley close. And I think, I've found my home too. That morning, the sky was clear, the air carrying a hint of late spring breeze. I took Haley to the city's children's hospital for her regular checkup. The doctor wanted to monitor her immune system, since she'd spent time in unsanitary and undernourished conditions. She didn't like hospitals, like most kids, but every time I promised ice cream afterward, and she always kept her end of the deal, even if it was just one small scoop. We walked into the main lobby, sunlight streaming through the glass windows onto the polished floors. The sound of footsteps, medical carts, and soft voices created a familiar but gentle background noise. I held Haley's hand and told her, "In a bit, the doctor will check your height, weight, and listen to your heart and lungs. It won't hurt." Haley looked up at me, frowning slightly. "I know, Mom. I'm not a baby." I smiled, brushing her hair gently. As we approached the front desk, a man stepped out from the hallway on the left. Light gray uniform, employee badge, a small notebook in one hand and a pen clipped to his chest pocket. He was looking down, jotting something, but when he looked up, his eyes met mine. In that moment, I felt my heartbeat skip. Greg, my father. He didn't shout, didn't cry like he had outside my office building. He didn't yell or stretch out a hand demanding the title of father. He just stood there, a little frozen, eyes weighed down with exhaustion like someone who hadn't slept in days. His face was gaunt, hair nearly all gray, back no longer straight. He lowered his head slightly, a gesture that could have meant hello or maybe an apology he'd never speak aloud. I stood still. I didn't walk toward him. I didn't turn away. I just held Haley's hand a little tighter. She noticed something in that sudden squeeze, looked up at me, then looked at him. "Who is that, Mom?" I looked him straight in the eyes one last time, then answered softly, "Just a stranger, who used to live in my memories." Greg heard it. I knew he did. But he didn't react. He simply bowed his head again, then quietly turned away and walked toward the emergency exit at the end of the hallway. His steps were slow, lacking the authority or firmness he once carried when he was the tallest figure in my world, when just the sound of his footsteps in the hallway made me shrink into myself. Haley and I sat in the pediatric waiting area next to a little boy playing with building blocks. Haley pulled out her coloring book from her backpack, coloring quietly as she whispered, "That man looked a lot like you, Mom. His eyes are deep just like yours." I smiled. "There are things we carry from the past, Haley, but not everything we resemble is something we choose to keep." She didn't ask more. She simply nodded, as if she understood. After the checkup, the doctor said Haley's health was stable, her height was progressing well, and her nutrition had clearly improved. I let out a quiet sigh of relief. On our way out of the hospital, Haley tilted her head up and asked, "Do you remember the ice cream promise, Mom?" I held her hand and nodded. "Of course I do. I'll even get you extra chocolate topping if you want." She beamed. That laughter echoed through the wide hallway and straight into my heart. I knew I had made the right decision when I opened my heart again, but this time, it was to step into a real home. A home with two people, a past already closed, and a future quietly growing with every peaceful breath. We stepped outside. The early morning sunlight filtered through the leaves, shining down on Haley's hair. She spread her arms and twirled along the walkway, giggling. I stood watching her, a strange calm filling my chest. I used to think that to be free, I had to keep running. But as it turned out, to truly feel at peace, I just needed to stop at the right moment and not look back at the things that had chosen to let me go. I started walking again, side by side with Haley, leaving the hospital behind and stepping into the gentle sunlight of a new day. Each of us carries our own definition of family. Some believe it's the place that never turns its back on you, no matter what. But for me, after everything I've been through, I've come to realize family isn't just about blood. Family is where you are seen, where your voice matters, and where love doesn't require you to sacrifice who you are just to belong. What do you think about my journey with Haley? About a home rebuilt from old wounds? Have you ever had to face pain caused by the very people you once trusted the most? Do you believe that sometimes walking away is how we begin to live more truthfully, more fully? Please share your thoughts in the comments. I would truly love to hear your story. And if this story touched something in your heart, don't forget to follow the channel so we can explore more journeys together. Real stories about family, pain, forgiveness, and the second chances that might come late, but are never too late.